There we go.
Okay, Abby, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm chairing the meeting today because Ahmed is out. So I would like to call this meeting to order on Monday, February 27th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. And if it's okay with the commission, tonight's presenter has a commitment at 6 p.m. And if it's okay with the commission, could we conduct the regular meeting following the workshop? I mean, we conduct right before the workshop and then the workshop following the meeting. Is that?
So we go first.
So I move to change. Is that okay?
Yes.
I move to change the order of the business to conduct the regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. and the workshop immediately following.
Just need a second
Second.
and a majority.
Aye.
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 Everybody is in favor? Okay.
So we will scroll down. Gio, would you like to read the, do we have any public comments?
We do not. Would y'all like to make a public comment this evening? No.
No. And do we have any public hearings?
No, we don't.
No, okay. So did you all have a chance to review the minutes from the previous board meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. I'll
We-
second that.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Is that in Eva? How do you vote?
Aye.
Yes. Unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And our first discussion item is we have a presentation by Mr. Rick Stevens regarding the 2016 Alpine Vision Plan.
I apologize for my voice. I thank one of the granddaughters for that. And I apologize for having to leave early, but I'm also on the fire department, Texas Employee Retirement System Review, Financial Review. And they just called me last Friday for time. It starts at 6.
Thank you, sir. No problem.
Let me ask that I provide some information about vision plan that was done in 2016. And so what I did is I took some slides that were presented to City Council back in 2018 and took some excerpts out of the vision plan. If you think back in that time period, one of the big questions on the table from the City Council standpoint was, where should economic development for the city be, and what should the city do from an investment standpoint to think about supporting economic development? And so that was the nature and the basis behind what that study was done for. So let's see if you can click through that, Gio. And so this is actually the cover from the plan. Abby, do you all have access to the plan? Because I can certainly put it online, but I thought the city would have access to it.
I sent it to them.
Okay, super
Yes.
good. So you've all seen it. You'll all had a chance to read. Go to the next slide, please. So what I thought I'd do is give a little background, some key data and the recommendations that came out of it, because I think from a planning and zoning commission, that's probably where your most interest is. But I think there's some applicability, not only from a planning and zoning standpoint, from an economic development standpoint, which is always a key discussion within the city as well. Next slide. So, this really gives the background. I'm going to borrow this because you brought my own copy up here, Gio. So I can't quite read it all that well. In terms of what was driving is really looking for improved opportunities for economic development. Small Business Development Center, Saul Ross actually supported, and they pulled in the Center for Urban and Regional Planning at UT San Antonio. So they actually did all the funding. The city provided the resources in terms of people, And again, it was about focusing on the downtown area as opposed to the broader development and the potential for tourism. There was a strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis meeting of 40 residents and business owners. The report was completed in August of 2016. And then there was a lot of discussions that went on after that, including reviews up at Sul Ross, City Council, and others got involved, and lots of copies have been distributed. The next slide really provides some key demographics. Not a lot has changed. The population in Alpine has been 6,000 forever. You could go back a few years and see some dips, but it's been 6,000. That excludes the Sul Ross student population. Estimated households about the same, 25 to 2,700 has been very, very consistent. Median household income, of course, has gone up as a result of inflation, but it provides some perspective about where that stands. What was very interesting was the estimated median disposable income, which was really, for me, sitting on council, a real surprise. Most cities, when you look at home ownership, the population, about 2/3 of the homeowners have mortgages and 1/3 do not. In the city of Alpine, it's completely the flip, and it's remained close to that thus far. The 2/3 of the population own their own homes outright, 1/3 have mortgages. And the reason that's important, it provides significantly more disposable income for the residents of Alpine than you would have in another city. Consumer expenditure, retail sales. The Alpine Business Association has actually got has asked the SBDC to update that information to bring us up to current, so we'll have that information as well. But I would expect it's going to be primarily from an inflationary perspective, where those numbers stand. You look at expenditures per household, sales per household, a retail gap, and this is an interesting element you're going to see on the next chart because it talks to where are the gaps in terms of business opportunities in Alpine, which leads us to the next slide. This next one of the things they did, the next one, please, thank you, Gio, was they took a look at what are the industry groups, and these are the industry groups that attract at the federal level, and looking at what is the demand, what is the supply, what is the gap or surplus, and what's the leakage or surplus. And leakage is what dollars are leaving the city of Alpine and what dollars are there more sales in Alpine than expected. And I think it begins to help some businesses look and say, where are there opportunities in Alpine? If you look at that top one, motor vehicle and parts dealers, it's very clear we don't have any new car dealers here in Alpine. People go elsewhere for that. But what we do have a lot of is auto repair. And it's, if you look in terms of, it was Napa, then AutoZone, now Riley's are in here, and they are all strong, thriving, booming businesses because there's a real need for it and there's the opportunity for it. If you look for furniture and home furnishings, I don't think people look too far, particularly when you look at Mitchell's, to say that's why they expanded. There's a need for cost competitive opportunities to buy furniture here in Alpine, and the same with electronics and supply stores. Then you look at food and beverage. We're buying a lot more food and beverage than you would expect for a town of our size from the economy. Again, that goes back to disposable income. If you look at healthcare, personal care, gas stations, again, gas stations, there's a gap. Not a surprise that Valero put a station on the east side of town, and the number of gas stations. Now, certainly some do well and others don't, but if they got a business model like all businesses, it's going to operate properly. So I think this gives you, and then food services down the bottom, I think it gives you some sense about, their view about where things were from a business opportunity in Alpine, and trying to look and say, where is the real economic development? The conclusion they came to on the next slide. The key recommendations, the real opportunity for Alpine: tourism, tourism, tourism. That's the opportunity to bring dollars in from the outside, given where we are from an economic standpoint. And their push was, they really need to improve what's going on in downtown Alpine from a lodging perspective, from a walking distance from the downtown area, from a retail perspective, and the opportunity for the art centers. I know there's lots of debate and discussion about what goes on over in Marfa, what goes on over in Alpine. I happen to have a bias for Alpine. I don't particularly care for the art in Marfa. I think they got a few better restaurants, maybe over in Marfa, but the art is far better here. And I hear that with a lot of people that come to visit. They like the art in Alpine, but lodging in downtown is certainly a struggle. At one point, as a direct result of this, there was a discussion with some hoteliers about potentially putting an additional hotel in the downtown area to make it easy for walking for people. The second was people could come for tourism, improve the historic buildings and encourage reuse of Alpine's downtown district. Now, just an aside over it, we had a meeting last night that Lisa and was, as we're talking about from an economic development standpoint, there are 32 vacant buildings at Alpine. So there are some opportunities in Alpine to take advantage of what goes on downtown. Another was this notion about the special event center and the farmers market downtown. Certainly we have that, but there's certainly an opportunity for more. The question is, how do you make it economically viable? I know Benjamin, who picked up the Granada, is trying to make a go at it. And he's got sufficient cash and capital to be able to make a run at it. I think that improves the downtown dramatically. The next slide, number 4 was, hey, let's improve how we allow people to walk around if we're focusing on tourism, enhance the sidewalks, street crossings for pedestrians, increase parking options, which is always a challenge in the downtown Alpine, and then connect the north side and the south side. Murphy Street, connect to Sul Ross campus. And their recommendation was develop the linear park along the Alpine Creek, including the hiking and biking path. It's as a result of that specific recommendation, the pipeline folks actually donated $200,000 to work on the creek to improve that. I know that's not happened, but that was the basis for them making the recommendation. The rest of the slides you see in there, and no need to click through them, but they show pictures in terms of the piano keys in for crossing and some of the potential things going on. So my sense is, and the reason this was put together at the time was not to necessarily be a roadmap, but really be a mechanism to help people look and say, where are the business opportunities in the downtown area so that investors can make appropriate decisions to be able to go forward in that area. I don't know if this is helpful or not. But that was, that's the comments, questions, comments. What can I help with?
I have a question, just out of curiosity. You said 32 empty buildings. Is that in the city limits or is that just downtown?
Let's see, what's that?
That is on Highway 18 from the hospital to the grocery store, Blue
Blue
Water.
Water. Yeah, yeah.
And on Highway 67
6790.
from the Dairy Queen to the Hampton Inn.
Yeah.
Just on those 2 streets. We didn't look at other.
Got
Yeah,
it.
so
32 empty viable commercial spaces.
Oh, were you able to tell if some of those buildings were marketed, or were they marketing them as,
There were a few 2-let signs or 4-rent signs, but a lot of them were just empty.
empty and interesting?
And they were varying sizes,
Yeah.
some very large and some tiny.
And those are all commercial
Yes. All
properties.
and if you look, up and down 679 or 118, the Alpine city limits 4.6 square miles. Most of that is included within the Alpine city limits.
And then the last thing is that on the key recommendations to increase tourism, and that is one of our top,
Yep.
I guess in your study that directly impacted economic development with
That's
tourism.
correct. Bring money in, and I use the term OPM, get other people's money.
Right. And then number 2, improve historic buildings and encourage reuse, because, and so in this study, did they look at other cities that had preserved their downtown
They did.
areas and that directly affected tourism?
That most definitely it did. And that was their big discussion point is take advantage of returning your city back to the way it looked, because that's what people want to come see.
Right.
Part of the discussion is Alpine being the gateway to the Big Bend. People are coming through here naturally. You can get them to stay here longer if you have more hotel space downtown. It's easy to walk around and be able to work that and make your buildings look like they used to look.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. And also in heritage tourism, what I've read is that those are the tourists that spend the most money in a community for the heritage, the people that come here
Yep.
specifically that's interesting.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate your time and doing
Hopefully
this.
that's-
I've seen this study come across so many times and I had never seen the presentation and it was always super intriguing. And I hate that Amit's missing it because it directly shows his block.
Oh, I know. Well, in fact, that was part of, it shows the
Right.
block there in terms of theater and all that, yes.
Yeah, but I know he'd be interested.
Yeah, there were a lot further discussions that got into potential parking locations and where some of those opportunities were. Those details are in the study itself.
Mhm. Okay, well, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks, take care. Must sneak out.
Then the next discussion item is to discuss the plans for the cleared land along 16th Street between Sul Ross Avenue and Brown Street on the west side of the Orient Railroad tracks. Matt
Yes.
Walter.
Judge Valenzuela asked me to find out what's going on with that land. So,
So Commissioner Walter did reach out to me. And he asked if I knew what was happening. I said that there were some interested parties that wanted to know about making some changes. And I told them that our advice so far, based on what they were telling us, is to replat. However, I did let him know that we have not received anything official, which is why I did recommend he put it on the agenda in case there was an update by the time the meeting is occurring.
And we haven't received anything, building plans or any otherwise besides the communication in regards for the plating process. That's all we know.
all right, thank you.
The next is discussion between commissioners and city staff regarding procedural items, questions, and or recent planning and zoning related items.
Okay, so I do have an announcement. I guess I'm gonna put Mr. Eason on the spot here, because tonight's his last meeting with us. He's resigning after tonight, so we will have a vacancy coming up. Other than that, did y'all have any questions for me or the building staff?
No.
All for me.
Okay,
I'll go ahead and say.
okay. thank you.
For y'all that don't know, I took a full-time job in San Antonio last year. So I was able to, last year I was able to work with my schedule and their schedule where I could attend these meetings, but it's just become extremely difficult with this amount of travel. I do lots of botanical field work across Texas and the United States and northern Mexico. And it's just getting really, really difficult to work with 5 other people who I have to work with in the field to make sure that everything is copacetic. So it just reached that point where I was going to miss easily like 4 meetings this year. So I decided it'd be best to step down.
Well, we will miss you and we appreciate your service. And I know that a lot of that you are on this because,
Yeah.
we all
And
asked you to.
as I mentioned to Gio, that if anything does come up with plants,
Right.
I'd be happy to, because I still am going to keep my house here and I still come back, but if there's any discussion with city planting trees or parks or anything like that, I'd be happy to chime in, be a resource.
He's an amazing resource and has designed beautiful spaces. And I thought it was interesting to note, that you volunteered many times to, to help. I think like one with Sul Ross
Right.
recently with their landscape plan. And unfortunately, they didn't take Michael's advice. And but anyway, so thank you for just your continual service to Alpine.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
If there are no other action items, are there any board member comments? So I move that we adjourn. Do we need a second?
That's perfect.
Okay, okay.
And then we'll go ahead and conduct the workshop.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Brian, that's how you have to put money in the San Antonio. I know you keep trying to resign. And then you're still here.
I guess that's what I gotta do.
Now, wait a minute. Don't tell her how to resign. We need her.
Oh, that's funny. How did she think of this?
She's
She's in the wrong ward. Two.
So so
All the workshop.
I would like to call the workshop to order. So we are continuing the workshop from our last meeting where we discussed historic districts. And I thought over the next several weeks, maybe if we have a better overview and understanding of historic districts and how they could benefit us. And we discussed the pros and the cons, because every pro has a con. So first of all, Wendy and I had a conference call. Do you want to talk about the conference call that we
Go
had?
ahead.
No, just fine. You do that and then I'll go, because I'll be talking.
Okay, we had a conference call with Paul Barwick. He's the, shoot, I don't know what his current,
I can't.
he used to be in the planning and zoning department in Bernie. He's now has a higher position with the city. I forget what his title is now. But I asked him if he could kind of help us, how Bernie has this amazing downtown. Just a little background, I kind of grew up in Bernie, not as from a child, but my 20s, 30s, and well, I'm not gonna keep going. I lived in Bernie for a long time. So when I first moved to Bernie, it was a lot like Alpine is now. It's a completely different place now, but the important part, what they did in time before Bernie had this humongous population explosion and a humongous explosion of tourism, is they did a historic overlay to protect not only what's on Main Street, but as Paul mentioned, they went a little bit, not too far back behind Main Street, maybe 2 blocks, I think he said, and it starts to get into some neighborhoods, so they kind of stopped it at that. So he kind of walked us through a little bit about the steps of how they did it and with what committees, and I wasn't prepared to recap this.
Yeah, you don't have to recap the whole thing.
He just gave us some pointers. He gave us some links. He gave us some links to what the city of Bernie, some documents kind of like these.
And yeah, and kind of, it can be done. It's fairly easy to do it. It's not, it's not a complicated process. There are buildings in the United States, cities in the United States where there are historic districts with as little as 2 or 3 buildings. So, and as we all know previously in years of, and Eileen can talk about this, that historic districts came up in the planning and zoning meetings for a year, 2 years, how long?
I'm gonna say at least 4 or 5 years.
4 or
early.
5 years.
Yeah. nobody-
Right, and it came to a screeching halt because the proposed historic district kept getting broader and broader and broader to then where it was, infringing on like homes, and it became too complicated, and then everybody, it just stopped. They got sick of talking about it. It didn't work. So we are proposing a small historic district, and I have a little presentation, just an overview of a historic district, what it would mean for Alpine. I've done a lot of research by talking through the historic Alpine. I've talked to several industry experts, architects, city planners. We've talked to, Wendy, with her help in the direction of an introduction of Bernie. So I hope to continue to gather data. So we can start. That cute little photo right there, by the way, is Holland. Must have been in the 20s or 30. How old is that car?
Oh, gosh.
30s?
Probably 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to scroll to the next slide. So this, I thought, pictures is worth 1,000 words. And this was Murphy Street less than 20 years ago.
Wow.
And we go to the next slide, which is still an older slide. It shows that, this was after the restoration of these buildings, and you can see people are in the streets, they're having picnics. They may be tourists, they may be locals. but that's something that we would have never seen in front of the old dilapidated buildings. So that is just, I think, direct evidence. I mean, there's so many studies that back all this up, but that's something that is in our own backyard. This is our study showing, that that historic preservation and historic districts can benefit. There's so many, I referenced a nonprofit called Place Economics, which is the private sector, and actually it's a private company. And they do all of these case studies all over the nation, studying different cities that have historic districts. And there are so many benefits that historic districts and historic preservation have provided, from an increase in jobs to downtown revitalization. You can go to the next slide. Heritage tourism, which is what Mr. Stevens and I just spoke about. There is a direct result in the increase of property values and a decrease in foreclosure patterns. Properties tend to maintain their values in up and down markets. There is an increase in small business startups and young business. There's also an increase in jobs in the creative class. And we do have it, right now, I mean, we have all of these vacant commercial buildings here. We have a housing shortage. There's, with adaptive reuse, these buildings don't have to be commercial. So it can help millennial and Gen Z housing. And, maybe Gen X housing too. It does increase our walkability and bikeability of the city, which, we can go into these studies and all of these in the weeks to come, but that directs, or if you hear of smart growth, like a smart growth of city, the walkability of a city is very important, especially for people that are moving in. And it's also it's much more environmentally friendly to restore a building than to knock it down and build something new. And, there's attractors of growth and tax revenue increase. So what I did, I took the original, if you can go to the next slide. This is this is the Alpine Historic Walking Tour. And a lot of the blue was the original proposed historic district, or part of it. And if you can see the red line, which is the little block, is a proposed downtown historic district, which what that covers, that is the block of the Holland Hotel. And that we have a few different options, but we're going to go over these. So you can see here that number 12 was the Napa building that it was next door to the Holland that was raised. And then we have the Holland Hotel, which is the number 13. Can you all see this? And we may have other copies for our audience members. And then that number 35, that is the Alpine Avalanche building, which is also was the Masonic Lodge and the offices of Whitfield Van Sickle, who still haunts the place from what I hear. And then it crosses in front of the courthouse. So this is just a proposed smaller downtown historic district. And then if you go to the next slide, and this is what we can all talk about in the weeks to come. I broadened it a bit and I went down 6th Street. Oh, wait, did I mess that up? I messed that up. 35 is 6th Street. 31 is Whitfield Van Sickle's office. The 30 is the Avalanche. So we're still on the original proposed. So that's 6th Street. So the next slide, historic downtown, proposed downtown historic district, that would go further down 6th Street to cross in front of the courthouse. Can you all see that on your, and it's probably easier to see it on the packet. And then there's other, we can continue to make it larger, or maybe later on we evaluate creating other historic districts. And you can continue to just scroll through. But I think because of history, that maybe we start with a small district. And if you scroll through to the landmark buildings, if you can just continue to the next slide. One more. Yeah. There are, in this little mapped area, there are at least 3 landmark buildings that we have. We have the Brewster County Courthouse and Jail, which is on the National Register and the State Antiquities. The Holland Hotel is on the State Register and the Hancock Building is on the State Register. But all of these other buildings, which is important because we have to have a survey. It's important to have a survey. That has all been previously done by the Historic Association. And we do have as much detail as we can pull from all of these buildings in the downtown area. So I would propose, creating a small district to start out with. We did discuss, I made a phone call to several building owners, including the owner of the Holland Hotel. And he is excited about it and thinks that it's long overdue, along with several of the building owners along 6th Street. And I've invited them all. We'll have them come to different meetings and discuss. But I think it's important, we want to have everybody on board and excited. Because as we all know, if there's, and we can go into detail on this, but the goal, you can go to the next slide. And I need to keep up at my stuff in front of me because I can't see either up close or far away these days. So, so the historic district it's a special district designated by the city council, consisting of a section of downtown Alpine that will protect and preserve the district's historical, cultural, and architectural character. The district properties would be divided into contributing and non-contributing properties. Usually those non-contributing properties would be properties that were built that are less than 50 years old. But also owners of those buildings, like current owners, can vote to opt out. They don't have to abide by the guidelines. I think some of them can be grandfathered in. There would be, I looked at several historic district ordinance examples or model examples. A lot of this is from Bernie, Fredericksburg. I tried to stay within the state of Texas. And just a ordinance example, we have the overview, but an example would be to protect and enhance the landmarks and districts which represent distinctive elements of Alpine's historic, architectural, and cultural heritage. We would hope to foster civic pride in the accomplishments of the past, protect and enhance Alpine's attractiveness to visitors, and to support the stimulus to the economy thereby provided. That's huge. We would also like to ensure harmonious, orderly, and efficient growth and development of the city, and promote economic prosperity and welfare of the community by encouraging the most appropriate use of properties within the city. And also to encourage stabilization, restoration, and improvements of such properties and their values. And in the perfect world, potential buyers, if you bought a historic building, you would automatically do all of these things without, even if it wasn't in a historic district. But unfortunately, sometimes people buy a building because they think it's a great idea, and maybe, they didn't understand the state of the building. They have some advice from a contractor. There's lots of reasons why if a historic district would help potential buyers, because then before buying a piece of property, if there's a historic district and guidelines, a potential buyer would know, okay, we have to, raising the building is not an option here, or as the last resort. We do need to maintain the facade if possible. And there is a, they can then go do budgets and figure out if that's going to be a good option for them. After the historic ordinance, the historic district ordinance is determined by council, then they would, you can go to the next, I think. Yeah, there would be some type of named commission. And we have briefly talked about this in our meetings. So there would either be let me find my place real quick. There would be it would be a landmark commission, historic commission, maybe planning and zoning governs this. Or, we call it a architectural review committee. And these commissions are generally represented depending on the volunteers that we have in our city. You know, there, we like to have, you know, architects, designers, historians, real estate brokers, attorneys, property owners of landmark buildings be a part of these historic commissions. You know, archaeologists. Most historic commissions like to have at least one member of the local nonprofit, that the local preservation nonprofit as a member, because it's important that regardless of the background, education level, experience, that the commission should have a demonstrated interest and competence and knowledge of historic preservation, you know, just some type of general knowledge. Now, we can all learn this together, which is kind of what we're doing now. But the role of the commission would then be to after it's established, that they're the ones that would provide a COA, which is Certificate of Appropriateness, for proposed work that's appropriate and consistent with the guidelines that would be set forth by the Historic Commission. But one very important thing that they're going to do, they're also going to seek program grants, which is huge. They would review historic structure demolitions. They would review plans. They would also recommend granting tax credits, tax exemptions. And they would work in general to preserve the city's historic and cultural heritage. Because if we have a smaller district, this commission would probably not meet monthly, because they would usually only meet when there's an agenda item, when there's a grant that they need to go out for, or maybe they've, you know, received an architectural plan or submittal. You can go to the next slide. And I'm trying to get through this quickly. I promise I'm not going to keep you here all night. So developing the historic district is regulated by the zoning code and the historic district guidelines. So there would be a code or an ordinance. And there would also be guidelines. And this is what we would all have to evaluate. And we certainly don't want to have guidelines that address aesthetics, because that should have nothing to do with it. It's really the list for requirements of property improvements. And we would once we get further down the packet, we would, and we talked about this last time, identify the building types, the architectural elements. You know, do we want to govern paint colors? You know, and our whole goal is we want to maintain the historical integrity, right? So I'm going to try to, if you go to the next slide. So stuff that would come through were construction, alteration, demolition, removal within the historic district, affecting the exterior architectural appearance of a historic district that requires a demolition permit. Maintenance such as painting services or repair would go through window, door repair, and masonry repair like walls and chimneys. They do not require a permit, because you don't want to have to, somebody like wants to, you know, minor maintenance or repaint their building with the same color. That should not have to go through a permitting process. I don't think, I think that would be severe. Any interior changes would not go through the Historic Commission, or roof replacement with identical materials. Anything that is, you know, exterior with updates, exterior maintenance, as long as it's the same, should not go through, should not have to apply for a COA. And you can go to the next slide. The application process would be fairly simple once we determine the guidelines. There would be architectural plans and submitted. And then there would be a review, a meeting, and a hearing, and it would either be approved or denied. So it's a pretty simple process. And you can scroll through. This is just all, you can scroll through to the little graph if you go to there. And then the next couple of slides, Just, these are just some examples of historic architectural styles that we would consult with our local historians and some architects and some of the building owners and identify, these are the historic, for whatever historic district we're proposing. This is the, this is typical Main Street commercial. You can go to the next slide, but this is the two-part commercial block. So this is all pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into the weeds on this because this would be an entire workshop, just identifying the different building types and creating guidelines, design guidelines. The rest of this presentation is elaborating on design guidelines, but I don't want to go into that too deep tonight. But I just kind of wanted now to open it up for discussion. So I don't want to be the only one talking. Weird.
Thank you so much for all the work you put into this.
Yeah, I think you've gone farther than in a short time than what we did in a long time. I'll guarantee you
I
that.
like what Out West did.
Oh,
They
yeah,
renovated
yeah,
Yeah.
With the original facade, bringing
Right.
it back out.
yeah, that was
So,
great.
That definitely fits with this,
Well, they don't own that building.
Linda Bowe.
Linda Bowe.
Linda Bowe
Okay.
owns the building,
Yeah.
yes, and she is
Yeah,
aware that we're
yeah,
working.
She's
on it.
very into that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, but they did a fantastic job.
I'm wondering what y'all are thinking.
Yeah, I'm wondering that too.
What is building services thing?
Yeah, just, just clarification on permit and stuff, what's required of us. We have a historical district, and that's a good thing. But I'm just wondering what the process is gonna be. What were we saying? How many slides ago it would go under like
An application process?
the applicant? We're gonna be directly involved in that too.
Yeah, you would be, so the application process would be, they're gonna submit, this is how other cities have done it, because cities are like, we don't have the manpower for this.
Right.
That's why they've established a historic commission.
Okay.
And then a lot of times planning and zoning, I mean, we're working on zoning and it's a lot for another commission to take on. So a separate, I would think that a separate commission would we would create a separate commission because they're the ones that would review the application. And then there would be a staff review and the hearing. And we can find out, we'll call, what was his name? Is it Paul? We'll call Paul and find out if the city, how active the city is in those hearings. So does the city, I mean, because I guess there was going to have to be a permit, the historic commission isn't issuing a permit, it'd be the
Right.
city.
And that's us,
Right.
just like health, safety,
Right,
irregardless.
right.
Because we want that, especially with a lot of historical buildings, a lot of them are attached and there's some caveats. Depending, I know you spoke with interior remodels, not requiring them.
But that would go under building codes. That's a separate
Okay.
thing.
I
That's not a,
just-
right.
Same thing with, I heard like a roof replacement 101.
Well, yeah, if they're replacing with the same exact, style,
Design.
then it wouldn't come under a design review.
Okay, but that would still be our
Yeah, that's
authority.
your- yeah,
Okay.
that's-
No, I just,
Yeah,
just.
yeah, that's just the design review. Like, we're not taking, I mean, the goal would be to help the city.
Mhm. As long as we have standards we can enforce coming on our part, this is.
Right,
Historical commission standards, what we have. Okay, no, I just want to clear the air
right.
with that, make sure we still,
You still do what you do.
yes,
You don't deviate from what you normally do
Right.
and the typical permits that would
okay.
typically be pulled.
It just goes through another historical review
Right,
process.
We don't want the buildings collapsing on 100 people inside.
Right,
And then the city's liable.
right, right. That's,
No.
that's.
No, it sounds great to me. Sounds great what you're doing.
Then
Thank
we
you.
would be mostly interested in the facade
In the facade,
Mhm.
yeah. And then it will come up.
and
at some.
signage.
Yeah, signage is huge.
Dark sky ordinance.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Very
Yeah,
important.
and if there is, a proposed demolition, that would come across as like, okay, why is this the last resort? Is there anything else we can do? So there's,
Understood.
yeah.
Would you want to, think you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just more concerned with the renovation process with a commercial building downtown. There is the asbestos surveys that have to be conducted, so that would be a part of your packet. Because none of that stuff can be touched, not even scraping off old plaster or anything because it's a commercial in the state of Texas, it's way beyond us.
Would that go through building codes that build, what is the group that, it's the building
standards.
building standards? Wouldn't that code go through there? Or is that?
No, not necessarily, because you can do renovation without it being structural. So like a roof, obviously you need to repair, but you can't remove like the interior, like sheetrock or anything
Right.
like that without giving up all of the state when it comes to a
Right.
commercial application with a historical building.
And any interior stuff would still come through you all. The commission does not address interior unless for some reason the city is like, okay, now we want you to address interior.
Well, even paint,
Yeah,
you can't scrape paint or anything inside of a historical building.
Right. yeah,
That's why it was such a big deal for the Porter's building.
yeah. So any of that stuff would be your typical chain of protocol, your typical protocol.
We're not gonna add the Green Cafe then.
Right, although, gosh, it'd be great. And then anything else?
I guess, what do y'all think next steps look like? Let's go back, and do you think next would be writing ordinance or?
Well, I think it's important at one of these meetings that we discuss the cons. Because we're going to be, at some point, someone's going to come to us and they're going to go, well, this is the reason why a historic district won't work and why it isn't good for us. And a lot of it we're going to hear is because you don't want, and we heard like the state in your business. Well, the state's not in our business. This is going to be governed locally. It's so I think it's important to have these conversations so we can create dialogue and understand both sides and, maybe at least we'll be able to address it. So if we have the pros, the cons, I think that's important.
And the size of the district.
The size, we figure out
We
the
need to
size,
be
like
really
what is the
focused.
best size? Do we stick with option A or option B?
Or C, you're another one.
No, there's C, D, and E. But I think when we start going C, D, and E, it's getting a little broad.
That's, just keep.
Right, and then so one of the roles of the Historic Commission is that they then would evaluate, after you have a historic district, they would evaluate implementing other districts in the city. So if one goes well, then maybe we have a separate district, separate small district somewhere else.
And do state buildings are they included in that, like the courthouse?
Yeah, that's it. Do they? Yeah,
Do they have to comply?
Well,
They're in
they can't comply now because of the addition. But when was that addition built? We're linking the two buildings. If that's 50 years old.
right, then
Nothing really happens to any of the buildings in the historic district until somebody wants to make a change, right?
right,
So
yeah, and
It's
nothing.
just sitting there until,
It's to
something
protect,
comes up.
yeah, and it's to protect them. It's to protect our city and the look from, that one person that buys, the Holland Hotel in 10 years, or worst case, something, that they want to put a dollar store there. There's nothing, we talked about this last time. There's nothing in the ordinance that keeps that from happening. You can put a metal building, you can do whatever you want along that little stretch.
yeah.
And right now, of course, like you said, they just raised that building, the prior Napa building. Or what
Right.
have you. So it's like, I wonder what's gonna be put in there now.
Right. It's an empty lot. It could be anything.
Who owns that? Charles Mallory?
Catherine
Sullivan.
Sullivan
Oh, okay.
or
Parker.
Do we
Chance
have
and
to get
Catherine
any
Parker.
public input to do
Raise
this? No, to create a district?
Well, it would go to council. So council would vote if they want to
Approved of this.
approve a district.
But still, you don't have to have any public input or
No, we would,
just about the whole thing.
We would, as a courtesy, go to the business owners.
Okay.
And I think we have right now, 90% support, only because I haven't talked to 100%.
Mhm.
So I don't
Really, we can just start with creating the district on our own, then it goes to council and then.
and even like neighborhoods in the United States have gerrymandered their own historic districts, to protect their neighborhoods. They've created a district, they've got it approved, and, they didn't have to. I mean, you guys are the experts, but as long as council votes, now council could get it, it could go in front of council and council could say this is a horrible idea.
I don't think we have to gerrymander too much.
Right.
I think it'd be almost pretty square,
Yeah.
pretty rectangular, I mean.
So what do you think the next steps look like as far as, do you want to add it as a workshop for the next meeting and invite business owners? Would you prefer to just have a discussion next time, again, continuing this discussion?
I would like to, I think we should, definitely for the April meeting, because it gives them a little bit of time, especially the ones that don't live here.
Yeah, we need some outside output.
Right, and I have spoken to Charles Mallory, right? Yeah, Charles Mallory, and I would like him, if he's open to talk to us. I know he is excited about it.
That's the Holland.
That's the Holland. And then I know Sarah Sibley. We know Sarah, she's part of our organization. The Historic Association, she's excited about it. She's really excited about the opportunity also to go out for grants and help with some of the rehabilitation of some of the buildings along 6th Street.
Well, we could do a walking tour instead of a meeting.
Can we do that?
Y'all can, if y'all are super careful not to take any action or discuss, official
Right.
decisions, then y'all should be okay.
Just like taking a tour and discussing like this is the history and like where we would, that's a great.
Yeah,
idea.
let's
We probably just
Visit
post a
Harvard
notice,
there.
just advising that a quorum might be present and,
So there's
if you
not,
want to invite the public as well, I think that'd be the better option.
that's a good idea.
So
Like-
when would you think about doing that?
Well, what if we had a workshop and walking tour, just like a brief workshop and walking tour in April, at that April meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
And that way the weather will be nice.
Yeah, and we don't want to do it near spring break and
Right,
getting
And I won't be here in May.
getting there.
yeah, okay,
Space.
Get the meeting in May.
okay.
So do you think possibly conduct a workshop here, adjourn, and then do the?
And then do the
walking
walking tour.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a great tour guide.
And so does anybody want to spearhead contacting the businesses, or
Wendy and I can do that. And I've already
and
started
we could publish, something in the Avalanche?
that we invite.
Put it on the radio, things of
Okay.
that nature.
Okay.
Great idea.
And I know this would be under, you were talking about earlier, like a landmark historic commission, that would be under your authority,
Oh, I
Here
would be,
or
the council would have.
under council, if
Yeah.
council approval.
I would think, unless for a while we could take it on. Do we want to keep it? And that's a council decision.
For now, I think we
Mhm.
can keep it on.
Right,
So we-
planning and zoning until it's developed and then I guess
agree.
council can decide. If
So
they
would
want,
this go on, would it be an official ordinance or that's?
We'd have to have an ordinance. I think it'd be better to have an ordinance establishing that planning and zoning basically took on the duties of a quote unquote historical commission. And then, of course, any official commissions or committees made by city council would be by ordinance as well, so.
okay,
With
We have
that
to write the order.
being said, I know what, again,
There's
what
lots
Mr.
of
Stevens was talking about and us with the corridor 118, 67, 90 coming through. And I can bring it up, dollar stores or any other things that we don't want here. Would that be something that could potentially be in the,
Purview. them.
with making that determination, or would that be us? Because our law code and ordinances are different.
I
statewide,
think it would really just be dependent on how, what the ordinance is written.
how the ordinance, okay.
And I think what the ordinance would do, I don't think necessarily it could block a dollar store, but it could block a new metal building.
Yeah, just
Right? I
anything
mean,
y'all
you
would
could-
have
You
that,
could like adaptive reuse. I mean,
Right.
maybe that's the answer to the dollar store.
it's just
model.
y'all would have that
Right.
authority to make the decision, say if it's a hotel and they wanted, like you were talking about, Generation Z housing, that would be
Mhm.
something that y'all would consider.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
Because I think it's just
Just wanna
a,
make
it's
sure it's in
the,
order.
it's
Yeah,
the-
like the bank, what are we gonna?
right. I mean, there's buildings, there's empty buildings here and
Right.
downtowns. This is one of the studies I was reading. It doesn't matter if people are living, working, eating, that it does help revitalize the downtown and help revitalize the city.
Of course, all of that, you need parking too.
Right. I mean, to have, we don't want vacant buildings. I don't think, I don't want Alpine to have vacant buildings. I want these buildings to be full and,
Agreed. So at the next meeting, I could have just a discussion or a continuation of this discussion, and then in April, we can do the workshop and walking.
okay, and then we can start looking at other cities' ordinances. And maybe modeling the proposed ordinance, using some of those as a model.
We probably all visited those cities. where,
Right.
Wow. I
Yeah.
Like what they did here.
Right.
Artesia, New Mexico, really changed.
Yeah, it's, there's, we thought about paying for a study. And I'll tell you, studies are expensive. They're $30,000 to $50,000, sometimes $100,000, sometimes way more.
We're probably.
But there's
talking
so
6
many,
months.
right, but there's so many studies done across the nation that
Yeah.
people, that we can, we know that Alpine will flourish with district and with the historic district and preservation. I mean, there's study after study that other people have paid for.
We'll keep the look.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
And luckily, with my position, I would say the past 15 years, I've been traveling around mainly Texas, doing botanical field work, but traveling to remote areas is one of the reasons why I ended up moving here. Was when I worked for UT, I was working out here so much, so I liked it, moved here. And you can see the towns that, whether the same size as Alpine or smaller, slightly larger, that when there is activity downtown, the place itself is vitalized. And there's other towns I've gone to and the downtown area is just dead. And there's dollar stores and game rooms and all of those other things on the sort of just the outskirts where they were able to get a foothold. And sadly, you can kind of see that happening here. So
Which would be, in my opinion, maybe a benefit of making it bigger, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was just in South Texas last week and then over in sort of Montgomery, Washington County as well, East Texas, and you drive through all these small towns like Navasota, beautiful, beautiful homes. And then I remember seeing empty downtown buildings becoming coffee shops and bookstores and antique stores. And then you start to see all the people now parking downtown and going to those stores versus that vacant downtown area when you drive through. And that's just one example. Pick any small town in East Texas or deep South Texas as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, again, I would personally think that maybe that would be one of the benefits of making it a little bigger, so.
Right. Well, what we could do, I think that sometimes it gets to where it gets into the residential areas and that's a little bit trickier. But, if we start out with one reasonable size, I mean, I would love to, have it span there's like a option E maybe that spans, down in front of the Granada, all of that. But, maybe that complicates it. Maybe we get too many, I'd rather have one small than none. Maybe have one small and then we'll have another.
Even E is a lot smaller than that one that we looked at.
Right.
It's huge.
Or that, the original. with the-
Mhm. The tons.
And it may have been, was the, and I think that that was the original proposed district. There may have been, it may have even gotten larger. If you go to the slide, I don't know if you're able to get to it, you may have already put it up. It's, just, you know, the proposed downtown District A. And just, you can see that it crosses
in the
in
blue?
front of, yes, in the blue. I mean, and I will say those are all, you know, I mean, we have surveys on almost every one of these buildings. But it does, you know, when it goes across the tracks, it gets into some residential areas. A little.
Why isn't 34 included?
Or-
A.
Wait, where's,
It's the appraisal district office.
Yeah.
oh, but you know, now that was probably 1950. Or when was that built?
I mean, the
It was a
mural,
post
there-
office.
the mural in there goes to the 30s.
Wait, am I thinking of the wrong one? Is that, you mean the old post office?
Yeah, the old post office.
Oh, I don't know why that's not included.
What's that one way up in the corner, 25?
I think that whole, you're looking at
We have a key, I just didn't, I should have
basically
listed the key.
10 square blocks, 10 blocks.
Mhm.
That'd be a nice start.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal.
It's that house on the corner,
Which one?
the 25.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
know which one it is.
I'm looking at 25, trying to find.
So real, someone redid it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one across from the visitor, that's the Ponton House. It's yellow, and it's the
Yeah.
Ponton House.
Just to make sure that I'm looking at this right,
Mhm.
so on the A, B, C, D, and E, we're going with the red square,
Red square.
right?
I was
Okay.
Right.
I was going with
But the
the
blue is the
blue is the
walking tour
first, yeah.
currently.
The blue is the walking tour.
Okay.
And then the red square
Ah.
are my efforts to make it smaller.
I think
Because
A
the
is way too
blue-
small.
The blue was original, that's the problem they had last time, is that was the area they proposed originally, and it was too large. And
We
that's
can
why I
make, we
didn't-
can make it T-shaped, include the railroad, Murphy Street, railroad station.
Yeah,
Station's historic, right?
yeah, I mean, I would do, what I would do is, I would have the historic downtown district, and then I would have later on do a historic Murphy Street district, do two separate districts.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
that.
Because I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think that may be easier to manage.
Yeah.
Right? You think?
Start with the one.
Let's start with one of the ones, and then we expand. And if we talked to one, I was hoping that Amit would be here because his building, did any of you see my post this week on the historic icon page? It's the photo of Rangra Vision before it, originally like in the 30s, I think.
Yeah.
It was the Mojave Theater, and anyway, I wanted him to see it, but because I would like to get his take. If we begin to contact different business owners, and the Rangras are game, and maybe Ann Callaway is game, and then we continue to move on. I mean, that, right. And then there's a Granada.
Yep.
I mean, that I think was the option. That may have been E. Yeah, that was E. I mean, I think this is a reasonable district. And that crossed in front of Granada. I think this can all be determined by the local, who is for it. I mean, we don't want to push this on a bunch of people that are against it.
B is the only one that includes the courthouse complex.
Right, because that was a question. I wasn't sure.
We don't know if that's.
And these are just some suggestions.
Yeah.
I just, I did
Right.
this in just a couple of minutes without a lot of thought.
So, but y'all are thinking that this is kind of the first thing we need to figure out is where,
Right.
even before we do the walking tour? Or,
I think we can do the walking tour.
Do it together.
Yeah, we have, because the walking tour, we have a brochure already. we can just, well, we can do the historic Alpine walking tour. And that way we're all knowledgeable about which building and a little bit of history and we'll learn something
And have fun.
and have fun.
Okay, so we'll do the workshop and walking tour on April 24th, and you said that y'all would notify the business owners if you need any help, getting a letter put together or
I
anything.
may need help.
We can
getting
do
a
that.
letter put together.
Okay.
You're gonna help me, right?
All right, that's- So if we have a letter put together, then it's essentially a script too, that we can send it
Yeah.
to them and then we can, send a nice email, phone call.
Those bullet points that Paul sent us, like why have a.
Right.
That was good stuff, because
Yeah,
that's
that was-
basically just answering their questions before they ask.
Right, how can a historic district benefit you?
How
Yeah,
would,
we definitely need that, how it will benefit you.
And I briefly I did a little bit of it. I added some of those, but there's even more on page. One of the pages. I didn't number them. I just realized that. Okay, sorry. But automatically numbered. Anyway, there's a little list of benefits somewhere.
I saw it.
Oh, here it is. It's on the back. It's
Yeah.
why historic districts are good for our community. That they're gonna really be interested that it maintains their property value. Increases business, increases property value.
I know I'm jumping the gun definitely a lot on this, but if this does come to fruition, just asking, is this gonna be like a dark sky ordinance as far as force compliance or
Yeah,
how?
we
You
would
know-
have to somehow force compliance.
Okay.
I mean, if
Just-
if they're in the historic district. And they don't they don't have a certificate of acceptance. And they paint the building.
Orange.
Yeah, bright pink.
You should pick that color.
Building is yellow and orange.
I mean, and that's what we can reference to the other cities, like what they've done is that I think there's a fine. And it's usually a fine per day.
Uh-huh.
So
But that's only for contributing members,
Contributing,
right?
right.
So everybody has the
I mean,
option
yes,
to not contribute.
those contributing, non-contributing things are an important question that we need to really study and what that means.
Or they could
Because-
do for variance,
Excuse me?
do a variance.
Mhm.
So if it doesn't comply for some reason, they can come across the board to get acceptance for their variance. That's what we do for building standards. If there's a reason why it affects them, you do a variance.
Mhm.
We just pick it up,
We just what?
pick it.
Pick it.
I'm still a little confused on how the contributing and non-contributing
Yeah.
actually.
Right, well, the other is we need, when we had Anna Maud spoke to the Historic Association was it November, October? We flew her down and she's a historic preservation expert and has written books and I need to have her, I would like to have her back because she
pick her
talked to us
brain,
about
because I'm
contributing
confused
and
too.
non-contributing.
Mhm.
And that's important for us to understand. I mean, maybe I haven't completely, I mean, she told us then that there can be contributing and non-contributing, but in reading a lot of data and a lot of articles, a non-contributing building would be one that was built in 1980. Not, or I guess, wait, it's almost 50 years old, but not quite. No,
So I'm
1980.
just I'm confused with how, okay, somebody, if they're not contributing, can they go against and just paint their building pink? For
Yeah.
example, if that was like a not acceptable color. You see,
Right.
I just don't see how,
Right, like how it really would protect us, is that,
Yeah,
sorry.
so you don't see how.
I just don't see like, basically, if they're non-contributing, do they just not have to follow anything?
Right, you know
Right,
what,
yeah.
this is what I'm gonna do for next time on I'm gonna look up non-contributing versus contributing. I'm gonna interview people. And I will have a full description on non-contributing and contributing, and then hopefully we can hash that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because I have
Confused.
questions on it
So, yeah.
too.
Yeah,
well, I think that the non-contributing, they can be non-contributing, but if they sell their building, then the next owner has to be contributing,
I
right?
know, but we're gonna find out. I don't know. I'm not gonna answer anything yet else that I. do
Yeah.
not know. But I will, we'll look it up and we'll,
We have a couple good people we can
right,
ask.
and that's what. We'll ask all these questions. And then also we'll reference other cities on how they handle. Someone, if they didn't comply. If they didn't pull a permit and they just. I mean, you deal with that.
Oh, every day. No, yeah, my biggest was if Geo had a historic building there, all of a sudden, it's not compliance according to the standards we're setting now.
Oh.
The next day, once it gets approved, city council, all of a sudden, he's not in compliance and
Would be grandfathered in.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's-
every building would be grandfathered. in.
Grandfathered.
It's only if they make a change.
right, that's the key I wanted to.
Oh, thank
Of
you.
course.
People
Okay,
come
thank you.
to our meetings to work, to like come and like he did today, like to workshop with us.
Yeah, that was what I was pretty much planning on for April 24th,
Can I?
is to reach out to all the business owners that could possibly be included.
But I mean, like an expert, like somebody,
Oh, yeah,
who's like
absolutely.
one of the people that Abby and I have met with. Can we bring somebody here to work with us?
Yes,
Who pays for that?
Michael just looks.
well, if we have to pay, we could take a look into that, see if that's possible.
Okay,
but-
so, but it's not just completely off the table.
No,
Okay, I mean, like travel
I mean,
expenses.
well, definitely, if we have to pay, like I said, we'd have to look into it to see if it's possible.
Okay,
but,
That's good.
But Abby's gonna become an expert.
Gonna try. I will try. No, if it's important for Alpine.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing how, in a year from now, I know we are all gonna be so much smarter.
We are. We're already getting smarter.
All right,
Look at us.
I know, every meeting.
I'm not like going, I don't know what's going on anymore, I know a little bit.
Yeah. So. All right, so Michael found a good article on contributing versus non-contributing. I will study that and I'll interview people and we will.
You don't
discuss
think it would be more cost effective if somebody could present by Zoom? I mean, that's.
Well, I could see if Anna or, one of these, she recommended somebody in her office. But this is why I hesitate, because a lot of. We want them to volunteer. Like the basis of their company is they're paid to give advice. So I want to find somebody that will maybe can meet with us via Zoom first before we have to, pay somebody.
Let me pick my brother's brain. He's a historical restoration architect.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. And we do,
Make him do it for free.
Does he live here?
and we do have, we have several people that I've talked to that, if they don't mind, I'm certainly going to ask them. And I will say that most of them, these are not greedy people, they are, preservation minded, love small towns, they love Alpine, they want to see our town
They want to
prosper.
share.
And so I don't think it's going to be an issue, but
Just in case, it's good
Right.
to know that.
right. And a lot of times, like they're paid to do surveys, kind of what I think has already been done. I mean, because we have the history, the who, what, when of most of these, especially most of the downtown buildings. So do we have any other questions or thoughts or?
How do you approach Bill Ivy?
I,
He knows a lot.
yeah. Maybe he can go on our tour.
You have to get him up from down south. Yeah.
He's one of the
I
owners
think-
down there, isn't
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
in
he
is,
the
he is.
time.
Okay.
Like he owns the building that I work, that's what I'm
Yeah.
asking.
Oh, do you want to ask him
Sure.
if he wants to? You know what? This is what we can do is that Gio, if you'll help us write the letter. And can you send it out to all of us? Like this is and you and I together.
Yes.
Can work on it. Like this is a letter to the business owners. Our next meeting, we are going to have a workshop and then have a walking tour. And then maybe that's something that rather than you just go to him and ask without anything, you can have this letter. This is what we're working on.
Yeah.
We would love to have your help.
But
And the-
he's interested in the.
Yeah,
downtown
yeah,
history
yeah.
and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'd be
Um,
happy to ask him too, if you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get that letter first. We have talking. points.
Yes.
Right, talking points and then something that, Okay, anything else?
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah,
Okay, well, thank you all for,
Done.
we're.
I'm scared now. I don't even know. It's just so.
You came in just at the exciting time.
I'm just learning, I'm learning.
We've been talking about game rooms, and dollar stores.
It is nice to not talk about game rooms and
Yeah.
dollar stores, you know, and actually talk about how we can, what we can do to make Alpine better.
Yeah.
Rather than just, and that's one of these things when we are discussing game rooms and dollar stores. It's difficult to go in after, when we get an application for that and then go, well, that's not the type of town we want. The only thing that's going to protect the type of town we want is a historic district with overlays and guidelines. And we do it on the front end. And then, and this is what I've told many people that have called me over the years because they're complaining that something, you know, they don't like what's going next door. Like, well, you can't really do anything after. You can't. Really, you
Right.
just can't.
I think
It's,
that historic district is important. If, that'd be the first step to this.
yeah,
Getting the vision plan thing going.
It's very important. I mean, not to keep sound like a broken record, keep going back to Bernie, but like I said, when I first got there it looked like this. If they hadn't have done something then with the growth being, you know, in the proximity of San Antonio, the way they are,
Oh, yeah.
it would have been terrible. And, you know, they acted before that happened. And so I feel good that we're
But they
doing
saw what
this
was
now
going on.
because
They saw what was going on in Wimberley.
yeah, well, even though he was saying, you know, the population's kind of, but you never know, and all of a sudden people are gonna be like, I hate the city and want to leave like I did. And that's how I ended up out here, you know, because Bernie got too big for me.
well, I want to address one thing, and I'm glad that Lisa's here because she knows a lot about it as well. Is when one of the pages, we talk about our landmark buildings and properties that we have that are currently landmarked either under the National Registry or there's the state, you know, the Texas Historic Commission. And that's not what we're advocating here or what we're saying. The buildings in this historic district don't need to be landmarked to protect, because what we've learned is that you can have a landmark building all day long and it doesn't protect it if it's not in a district with guidelines.
Right.
And so I'm not even quite sure sometimes, and I'm a history, and so is Matt, what good it does to have a plaque. It's just a plaque, I guess.
Like you put Bjorn in one.
Right. You know, it's a lot of work to get those plaques. You know what, I'll say what it does. I'll take that back. It does help those, if it's a business, apply for tax credits, which is huge. Are there any other benefits of a plaque that you, in your research? Or a landmark outside? Yeah.
I would guess that if it's a building that's open to the public, it would be a draw for more tourism.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
There's also some significant.
Mhm.
One is the cost of insurance. And mentioned 80%.
No.
Of course, the cost of repair. Are significant.
Right, because it's irreplaceable. If it's
They want-
right,
They want the exterior to be as true to the original as possible.
Mhm.
So for instance, the Ritchie, because the stairway up was not built to match the original one. It keeps its Texas registration designation, but it could not qualify for national because it's not exactly.
right. And I think that in that, it's important in writing, when we begin to write the design guidelines, that we don't get so stuck on like, you know, it needs to look like 1888. I mean, I think we need to, we're reasonable. We want to kind of maintain what it looks like right now.
Right.
You know, this isn't, you know, I don't know, it would like Linda Bowes or the building, the Horde building. It's actually, you know, they tried to restore the original brick, they couldn't. Because it was in horrible shape, so they had to paint it, which, you know, that is perfectly acceptable, it looks great. And so I think part of that, keeping an open mind with, you know, maintaining certain maintenance things that you have to do in order to keep it whole, but it doesn't necessarily look like it did. And
We don't
When it
want
was
to make
built.
it too hard on.
Right, exactly.
Revitalizing downtown. We want those buildings to be used and
Right.
occupied.
we don't want it to be over there, like, okay, don't buy there.
Yeah,
But we want them to go by there because then we know if somebody builds next door to us, it's not going to decrease the value of my property. You know,
Right.
I mean, our goal is to protect Alpine and the business owners and not.
Not have bomb our house.
Right,
right.
right.
I don't know why.
So that, but I think that's why a district, a city district, historical
Right.
district is so much better sometimes than the state,
Yeah.
than the landmark, state or national. I mean, I think those are great. I mean, it's fantastic, but you do need something else in order to govern it. Protect it.
What's the monument, the San Jacinto Monument
Mhm.
in Deer Park or
Yes.
whatever that place is called? Yeah, so if you're not familiar, the big tower thing over in outside of Houston. Beautiful piece of architecture, and it's surrounded by chemical waste facilities.
Oh,
The Valley of Texas isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
So it's gone.
And so they didn't have the foresight to preserve the land around it, just that one little, I don't know how big it is, just a few acres,
Yeah.
and everything else around it's just. I used to work over there, it's just, yeah, it's horrible.
Had a friend of mine caught a 3-headed fish there.
it's like the Fulton Mansion too, for a long, long time had an RV park in its yard.
That's right.
Remember that?
Yep. Yep.
We could go on all day about.
Yeah, I
it. It's
know.
not-
So-
Before we take the next item, let's take a little break.
Okay, it's fine. I think we're ready to adjourn. I
No, we
think-
have one more item
Oh, by all means, let's take a break.
on the workshop.
There's a workshop. Okay, so-
item.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Thank you.
No, it's just, what is our?
What are we talking?
The resolution.
On here. This part.
Oh, there's one. I don't know. if it's up here.
Where's the one?
Oh, it's a number 3, but it's with comment.
Public hearing. No?
It's on workshop overview, resolution 2022, city council resolution. And zoning for key objectives, but it was a wrong, it was wrong. No, I don't. Gio, where are the bathrooms?
Through here, you can go through here, this door and then on your left.
So like, you know, about pavements, they have so many different. In downtown area that they have. And so they start.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw it. Became. Yeah, everything was wrong. So I'm burner recording for to raise, but this is my first actually. In that one colleague.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Wendy.
Hola, I'm Eva Olivas. It's like nice. to meet you.
Who does your hair?
I'll spell it. It's just hi.
Oh,
Eva.
Oh, Eva. Okay.
I'm Eva.
Got it. Hola, Eva. Yeah. I did that. I'm a little slow sometimes.
There's more in there.
Does your hair in person?
Yeah.
The restrooms are right here at home too.
I thought-
So my daughter wrecked my car.
Oh, how'd you do that?
She just wasn't watching and
Is she
ran
okay?
the gate. It was fine, car's on. So I was panicky that I was gonna miss the day.
Yeah.
And so,
What happened?
it, and my, so they're fixing my door. And of course, you know, the chance like, are they gonna fix it by Friday versus?
So here in Alpine or?
No, it was in Houston.
Wow.
So
What happened to her?
my daughter got my car.
Yes.
My car, and so my car's in the shop. So I was worried I was gonna miss it. So then I had a flight. It's gonna fly last minute, which I don't, you know, and then I worked it out. I borrowed David's truck.
Oh, okay.
He's carless.
You were stuck here without a car and you walked here.
Fine. But the problem is I wanted to spend time here and I didn't want to have to go back and forth.
Back and forth, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back.
Oh.
See the other item? It's on the workshop.
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah, it's an almond thing, so it'll probably be.
No, I'm gonna do it.
Oh, you're doing it?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the
I'm
city.
sorry. I would
It's
have, I
okay.
would have gotten through this a lot faster. Okay.
Now, what's the civic center is the restaurant. The women's is around the corner.
The lights.
Dark. Pitch black. I couldn't find the light switch. And so Gio said you have to go upstairs to the women's light switch. So that's why I was like, oh.
There's an upstairs here?
Uh-huh. I don't know what else. It's just storage, right?
So you go through here, basically right here, and you go up. Second.
What's up there, offices?
It used to be a DJ booth.
The DJ booth?
Yeah, it was a,
For the thing,
For
the
the
community
civic
center?
and it was the shoot number one. It was a country and western play.
Really?
Yes. Our prom was there, but also before that, like,
Oh,
lots of.
Speaking of that,
no, yeah,
I went to Kara the other day.
You read it for again?
Well, she works at John Kerry Garden.
Oh,
So I'm going there for their.
Uh-huh. Yes, we're gonna have a picnic at the, on Sixth Street. We're gonna have a community dinner that night, and so if you are in town for the July, it will be fun.
Yeah.
It's a community dinner. Through the community project.
You've been now buying your whole life, like some. of
Yeah,
these
she was telling me about it.
Thank you.
My sister's not John, Tammy are.
Yeah. You've been around a long time. Oh,
She was saying.
Martha, what's your elbow?
Yeah.
Some good at 2007.
That was just a wiki article.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
No, it's a good one.
I've been here since 15.
No, it was not.
Yeah.
I used to live down here. I knew it was in Bama. So I knew much people when I moved here. You're from Bama? Do you know the Hassan place? Charlotte, no, Hassan. Do you really? I do. Yeah, very good. You know, they're both gone.
Yes,
They-
they're.
And just a quick reminder that if you all are missing the paperwork,
Yes.
it's in the black folder. if you want to about.
They were, Charlotte was a volunteer.
So are we ready to read? The next workshop item is
My dad was close to both.
the city council resolution tasking the planning and zoning commission with key city objectives for the fiscal year 2022-23.
All right, so we thought that during the workshop, it might be helpful if we explain a little bit the recommendations for each of these tasks, just to give you an idea of what each means. So the first one is the ordinance review. And it says the current ordinances should be reviewed, amended, and updated to conform with state law, planning and zoning best practices. The board is tasked with reviewing the ordinances and recommending changes that benefit the city. So this is something that's ongoing. The recommendation for this, what you would do for this objective, is for the assigned commissioners to review the zoning ordinances to ensure that they are up to date and current with acceptable standards. The zoning ordinances may be viewed, and we have the pathway there in which you can view those. So what we've done to help is we've made suggestions on which commissioners might want to focus on this, and that's not set in stone. I mean, if you want to change it up and change up who does what, that's fine. It's up to you guys. But what we recommended for this, for the ordinance review, is actually 4 of you to focus on it because it's a large task. So we recommended Amit, Abby, Ava, and Mindy for this one. The zoning map shall investigate all zoning changes since 2013 and record changes that have occurred in an effort to update the zoning map. The commission should then provide the data to the city so the city may cause the map to be updated internally or by a third party. The recommendation here for this task is that it will be for the assigned commissioners to utilize the minutes of the city website, because all the minutes of city council meetings are on the website, to research ordinances which changed zoning after May 21, 2013, which was the last time the zoning map was updated. So it's really, yes, it's really out of date. The assigned commissioners would gather each ordinance number and provide the list to the office of the city secretary so the city can use an engineer or GIS expert to get the map updated, and then a link on where you can get these. So the suggestion for this was Matt, Ava, well, Michael's not going to be here, and Eileen. We changed the completion date to June 1st because we need this before we can do item 3, which is a comprehensive zoning plan. All right, so that would be determined later, who might want to work on that. Item 4. Okay, the historic district, and we've spent a lot of time tonight discussing this. This is very good. And this commission shall investigate the possibility of the implementation of a historic district and or historic overlay. The commission shall take steps to determine how to best preserve the history of Alpine and to memorialize a set of standards that will enshrine the character of Alpine's history. So the recommendations, we have the workshop scheduled for today. So we've discussed plans. We're already well on our way here for a downtown historic district and the current historic overlay. And this is spearheaded by Commissioner Branch. Thank you so much for all that you have done in this endeavor to begin with. And the recommendation is to view our current historic overlay and to continue to improve, refine, and enshrine appropriate standards. So the recommendation for this group would be Abby and Wendy, and then Michael's not going to be here, but Abby and Wendy so far. And we can add in somebody else, or y'all can change it up. Do we currently have any historic overlay?
No,
No. Okay.
right? We don't.
We have the one from 2011, I believe it was.
But was it the one, I thought that wasn't voted on, or what didn't make it in the ordinance? We decided
I
that.
think it was a past ordinance, definitely, but there was really never much done with it.
Okay,
So there is a set of standards, and part of, making the new historic district would probably be to repeal that one.
okay.
Like I said, I don't think it ever went anywhere.
And I can't remember what area that was for. Was that for all of Alpine?
I'd have to bring it
Well,
up. I
yeah,
can send
we
you all
need
by
to
email if
revisit
you'd like.
that. That's always confused me how it,
I'll resend that. by
okay,
email.
okay.
Okay, good, thank you. And then the 5th one is to control growth of stores deemed detrimental to small economies. The recommendation here is, well, as a community, we are aware, the commission, the city council, and the city, we've all received feedback from residents that certain stores have been proven to be detrimental. So this objective is to research the issue and determine what steps the city can take to ensure that these businesses are not allowed to continue to be established. Because many residents were passionate about the issue. So the city is hopeful that a viable, important word, legal solution may be available to mitigate the issue. Gio received a phone call from Dollar Tree. You want to tell them?
They were inquiring about the Porter's building, the old Porter's building, to see if it was, what did they want to know? They wanted to know if, something about it, because they were interested in coming here, Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree.
Oh, my gosh.
Of course, yeah, I mean, there's.
So this
That's
is
a whole new one.
utmost urgency.
It was a little big from what they typically go for, so he wasn't sure if they would, but, because it was much larger than what they usually go for. But they did ask about where the garden center is located and asked if I knew anything about that, and I said, no, I don't know if that's for sale or.
If all the Dollar Trees just, or all the dollar whatevers combined and moved into the Porter's building
Right.
and then leave everything on its own.
So I feel like there's urgency with this one.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, we did receive a lot of feedback, but I mean, if there's a way out there, a legal way, like, let's find it, let's try to implement something. Because many of the things that, basically the recommendations that residents made, like, it wasn't legal for us to stop it. Like, it's just point blank, let's find a legal way to help this issue.
Yeah, because we were stuck.
Yeah.
They were threatening legal action.
Any clothing stores coming soon?
I heard Burke's was interested in the old Porter's building, but I'm not too sure for sure.
They haven't called.
Well, they called and they expressed interest about taking it to the real estate committee, but I'm not sure if they ever took it or if they decided to, purchase it or.
Yeah, Geo did tell them that we already had quite a few dollar stores.
Yeah, I
here.
told them that we had four. Is it four now?
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully that deterred them, but that was very concerning when I came in and Gio told me he had that phone call. All right, so for that, the recommendation was Eileen, Matt, and Amit. And then for number 6, okay, the in-person visits. As Gio had said before, you just have to be careful not to have a walking quorum, and violate TOMA. The city's been in trouble in the past with TOMA violations. So in-person visits are good. Commissioners should consider making them to sites that are considered for new or different zoning to include current and future development. So the recommendation here is for you to continue doing that. The proposed sites the commission will be voting on. The city reminds commissioners that it is not legal to enter onto private properties. Careful there without the consent of the owner, and recommends the commissioners only view such properties from public right-of-ways. And so that would be everybody. And then the same thing with number 7, that would be for the chair. Let's see. Yeah. Each quarter to present updates to council on what's going on with the task objectives. So the recommendation there is Ahmed or a representative if he can't do it, or if y'all just want to rotate. But like I said, these are not set in stone. So if there's something you would rather do, then change it up. We just wanted to make some recommendations so that we could get y'all going on these things.
And I'd like to elaborate as well on the reporting. The city manager did request that a representative of P and Z be at every meeting where P and Z makes an official recommendation. Somebody from P and Z attend the council meeting to speak to that recommendation. And last time that we did actually have this on the agenda for discussion, and Ahmed did request that we make a workshop. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all understand the objectives or ask if there's any other questions.
So do we, like this one, like the ordinance review number 1? I guess we all need to get together, but that's a quorum. Right? So how do you recommend that when we have, do we work these out here do we establish workshops where we do this, or what is that?
If you look through the ordinances and you see things that you may want to look up, and you look at other cities and how they do them, or you look at other planning and zoning best practices, you really what this is meant is to identify any issues with the ordinances and recommending changes.
So we should all read these independently and then discuss here.
Yeah.
That's for the best way. Okay.
And I've been actually working on the zoning ordinance for a while, so I can help with that.
Oh, thank you.
Yay.
Where is the zoning map?
The zoning map, I have a copy in my office. If you ever want to see it, it's online on the planning and zoning page. I have a copy right here as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any recommendations, Michael, for somebody that might want to sit in your chair?
Linda Bowe is my neighbor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She's not here. She's here less than I am.
Yeah, she's in Fredericksburg, right?
She's down Southmore. She's in Fredericksburg right now. I think.
Yeah.
Does anybody know of
I'm
anyone?
thinking, well, no, Michael is my first choice.
Mhm.
We'll think about it.
Yeah, because we need somebody to sit there.
And we have some neighbors that, there's, Carla McFarland down the road, and we'll ask.
Okay.
Yeah, I can look at the map.
Maybe recommend somebody or make a phone call.
So what other questions do y'all have about the objectives? What about the proposed commissioners to work on each?
I would love Matt to help us with this historic district if he's,
Okay,
if he wants to.
right.
Yeah.
I don't want it to give him more work, but
He
his,
said,
He's retiring soon, right?
yeah, he has plenty of time.
Museum, yep, in October. Now I have more time.
Okay, well, I always appreciate his insight, and it's knowledge.
Would you like to be added to that task too?
Which one?
The historic district.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Historic districts. To help, Abby, who's on it? Abby and Mandy. And Michael is gonna be on it.
So essentially, if y'all could give me back a final list, I could kind of record who's assigned to what. And going forward on each agenda, you'll have each item listed on the agenda and each member would present updates or progress, or, you know, if anybody has any ideas, the whole commission can collaborate to see, you know, how we can best move forward.
So during this workshop, do y'all want to finalize that list of who's doing what?
Well, I think that we are missing Amit. I mean, I know we're missing Amit. This may need to be something where he, I mean, I'm fine finalizing, that we can just. If you
And
think,
then y'all could always change it going forward.
Mhm, okay,
Yeah, I might have to make an appointment to pick your brain.
Okay, anytime.
Stuff.
I'm always here.
Yes, you are. Sometimes late at night.
Yeah, that's-
and then on that ordinance review, you know, the it's amended and updated to conform with state law. And planning and zoning practices, I mean, that's. I'll go through every ordinance. And I guess we'll have somebody else look at it.
And you know, that's the benefit of actually assigning the different spots, because I mean, you're obviously very consumed with the one objective.
Right,
I wanna, your time may be better focused there.
okay,
But and you know, that one is a pretty broad category. As Jessica stated, she's already been working on the
okay,
ordinances.
thank you, Jessica.
So it's not, you know, we just want to make sure that it's at the forefront and it's being discussed, and if they
Right.
need to be changed, they're changed.
Okay. All right, so do we need to, what do we do next?
So if you have an idea of tentative assignments, like I said, we can always change it next time.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm fine using your recommended assignments.
My
you know.
problem is I just can't commit to anything and promise you anything. I can do what I can. If I get free time, I can try to do something here, but
Right,
I mean, just coming to the planning and zoning right now is a big commitment for me. To get here.
Well, and you're on your way out as well.
Yeah, but I will, I mean, all things, I mean, I've worked on that zoning map for a long time, so I could probably, you know,
Mhm.
definitely see if I can do something with that. And I would definitely like to find a way to keep these box stores out of here. That's for damn sure, but
Okay, yeah, I
it's
mean,
just, you know, I can do what I can.
that's fine.
I'll try to contribute as much as I can. I just can't promise you.
yeah,
So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll just get all of these items on the next agenda. And then y'all could all collaborate and give updates as you have them.
okay,
And then maybe we can just finalize those assignments next time.
okay, and then just for like, you know, because I'll schedule some time with Jessica. But we can't really do a Zoom meeting or a committee meeting with them because of the Texas Open Meeting Act, right?
I mean, just not all at once, but I mean, you can, we just have to post an agenda. So you would want to check with me, make sure scheduling is okay. You
Okay,
can post an agenda. And the other thing is, you know, you'd need to have a quorum in person.
okay. All right,
I'd like to meet with Jessica if you.
yeah. we
And I can work
meet the
around
three
it.
of us.
Do smaller groups. You just have to be careful not to like take action or have group action, you know.
Right, it's okay, like just if somebody to,
We just want to be as transparent as
Right, I
possible
got
and
it,
give
okay.
people the opportunity to know, you know, when we're meeting.
right, okay.
Why is there a 23rd September deadline for the zone comprehensive zoning plan?
So that is just basically a rough deadline that the council did task at the time.
My
But-
fiscal year.
Yes, it's basically coinciding with the end of our fiscal year. And, you know, if the recommendation is that we need more time, well, we need more time, you know, as long as these objectives are being looked at, you know, and then efforts made to do something with them, I think that that would be sufficient. Especially being that the comprehensive zoning plan, we later came back to you and told you that you need the zoning map updated first.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
I move that we adjourn the workshop.
Okay, we're there. Thank you.
Yeah. Eileen, do you know anybody who might